Welcome to the Inside Texas Football YouTube channel powered by InsideTexas.com. I'm Joe Cook, pinch hitting for LC. We got the rest of the regular Monday crew. We got Eric Naleen, Drew Kelson, and Ian Boyd. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel. And, of course, head to InsideTexas.com for the latest on what the big news of the day is. That is, or of the evening, I guess. We had big news of the morning. We got big news of the evening. The big news of the evening is that the vacancy created by Terry Joseph's departure for the NFL to the New Orleans Saints will be filled by Duane Akina. And we got some people who know a lot about Duane Akina, including Drew, you, who played for him way back in your time. Just, off the top of your head, thinking about Duane Akina coming back to Texas, what are your initial thoughts, and does it excite you to see your old position coach come back?
It's funny. I'm excited about him because one thing that separated him from really just the entire staff, and maybe it's because we got coached by him or I got coached by him directly, is his energy and how he had an infectious energy and the way that he coached. You couldn't show up slacking. I mean, he was going to challenge you in every way. And he was actually a coach during that time, whether you were a backup player or whether you were Michael Huff. He was going to coach you to where your talent was and push you based on what the expectations was. So you'd see Huff mess up in a drill on something like minute, and Akina just rips him one, but then you get up there and it's something you're not even capable of doing. And so that's one thing. His energy is infectious. So my biggest question was, and it's funny, I've gone back and looked at videos recently of him coaching, is does he still have that energy? Does he still have that fire to really bring that energy? Because I definitely know it separates him. From a schematic standpoint, I'm not concerned about it at all, but the energy and infectiousness and the way that he coaches to life beyond football, I think fits in well with his staff. I'm excited about it.
We were just talking off air a little bit in that, when he was coaching you, he was 48. He's 68 now. But Eric, one of the things about modern college football is they can have some guys maybe go out with, and replace him on the trail. He's going to be the guy, who knows for how long. He's 68. He's going to be the guy talking to these recruits. But as far as going out, they'll still be able to put other people in front of him from the support staff, thanks to the rules that they have.
Yeah, it's 2025, and Duane Akina just got hired at Texas again. I think it only makes sense under these circumstances, and not just the circumstances with recruiting, where other guys can hit the trail for him, but also with the staff makeup. When Blake Gideon first left for Georgia Tech, we thought we had a safety search, and a lot of fans were mentioning Duane Akina. I'm thinking there's no way that it makes sense to have Akina and Terry Joseph on the staff. They wanted to get younger at corner, so Joseph goes over to safety. And now it's a much more like for like. You're trying to replace the guy that's more long in the tooth, even though Terry Joseph still had his recruiting fastball for sure. What they were looking for is to replace experience and somebody that can marry the back end of the front end, which was a big key to this past season. Akina's familiarity with Johnny Nansen, I think, is massive. I'm sure we'll talk about that. But, there's a lot of different factors of why this makes more sense. I'm not sure that Akina was the best hire that could have been made, but obviously they came with a lot of thought. They had plenty of time to go over their options. They were not caught off surprise by Terry Joseph. I had that Terry Joseph article written a week ago. So they knew that was a possibility. They had time to explore their options. They came up with Duane Akina, a familiar name. And, Akina almost came to Texas last year as an assistant, came very close to that. So, be given all the different factors, guys going on the recruiting, having recruiting proxies for them on the road, the experience that they need, the familiarity with Nansen, it does make sense more so than it did even 3 weeks ago.
Well, I mentioned that because if you remember on Friday, Sark made all those hires official, and Kenodo Hudson, who's an analyst right now, actually not an analyst, he's the Nichols coach, was previously the corners coach at Ole Miss under Lane. That seems like you're talking about proxies. That seems like maybe someone who will end up being a proxy for Akina. Ian, like Eric mentioned, we wrote a lot about Akina last year because we thought he was going to come back and be an analyst. Brent Brennan, when he got to Tucson, decided to hire Akina to be his defensive coordinator. I was looking at Wikipedia, and I think, the Arizona staff sheet, and he had gone back to defensive backs coach because Danny Gonzalez, the former New Mexico head coach, he is now Brennan's defensive coordinator. So all that to say, still, we know a lot about what he brings as far as scheme and teaching. How does what he does work with Pete Kwiatkowski, Johnny Nansen, and just the whole Texas defense?
Well, we know it works really good with what Johnny Nansen does because they were doing it 2 years ago at Arizona. And I'm with Eric. Akina is an older guy. There's some interesting things about how this is going to work. But I'll tell you, I absolutely loved what they were doing at Arizona. And they got into all these different sub packages. Akina had really good safeties and man cover corners on an assembly line out there somehow. So as of 2 years ago, he still had some pretty impressive energy. And they were playing dime and sub package defenses like Orlando only dreamed of. And I was they're like playing with like 7 defensive backs and shutting down Lincoln Riley's USC offense with like a 3-0-7. So I can't even remember. That doesn't add up. 3-1-7.
That leaves somebody off the field.
3-1-7 adds up to 11. There we go. And so some of the schematic stuff is interesting. They already installed that Tampa 2 dime last year. Maybe they could expand on that if they can find enough defensive backs. He's going to have his work cut out for him. He's getting amazing raw materials to work with in the secondary, but it's all young dudes and Michael Taff. So that's
Jelani's not all that young. I'm curious to see how they deploy the nickel spot. You know, they always like that kind of that 4 corners philosophy. Texas was using guys that they felt could play corner at star. I wonder if they want to keep Gilbo there or if McDonald gets a look like we've been hearing that McDonald was going to play it a lot more. Be curious to see how he deploys that. Did you have a feel for how he used nickel? Oh, he had that one guy. That guy he's pretty dang good. I think he entered the portal. I forget his name. But he was more of a traditional safety playing star, it seemed like.
Well, he'll play man coverage. So whoever the nickel is has got to be able to play man. I mean, back in Drew's day, they didn't even need to play nickel all that often because their safety was Michael Huff. And Michael Huff was as good as a corner when it came to covering a slot, right, Drew?
Yeah, but we ended up playing nickel because 7 of our top best defenders were at DB. So we played a lot of 5 DBs just because it just made sense with the talent back there.
I know there are concerns. I mean, there's obviously going to be concerns about a 68-year-old coach in modern college football, but I don't think he hadn't lost his fastball because Takario Davis, a name we've kind of been familiar with over the past couple off seasons, I think he did enter the portal at one point. And then kind of became a will he, won't he scenario. He's going to the draft. That was a pupil for Akina. And then, Eric, you'll like this one, Paulson Adebo over at Stanford when Akina was still at Stanford. He's in the NFL now. So he's been putting guys in the NFL still, even at this time. The game has not passed him by. I think that's made very obvious. And then, Ian, didn't you say, with a lot of those man – or at least single high principles, that marries pretty well to what PK and that specifically is what marries well to what PK and Nansen are running these days.
Yeah, last year Texas majored in pattern matching cover 3. Akina would probably prefer just straight man coverage. But he can teach zone too. I remember it would have been 2013, right? They fired Diaz after week 2. And they brought in Greg Robinson. They had him on ice, like in California. And they bring him in to be the defensive coordinator. They come out, and he looks at the playbook, and it's like, okay, quarters. And they played quarters against Ole Miss, and Hugh Freeze lit him up for like 50 points or something. And you kind of got the sense that Akina kind of took over from there. And they played man or zone, single high every play. They played nickel and dime, and they almost saved that season. So I think that's Akina's idea of versatility is single high man and single high zone.
But he can coach to all of it, though.
Yeah,
he can absolutely coach to all of it. I think one thing that's overstated or understated here. I mean, you have a nickels coach and a corners coach who are young, hungry. When it comes to some of the legwork on recruiting, when it comes to some of the energy you think you're going to get, they're going to be sponges too. They're going to connect and relate to the players. There's a lot of people beyond the staff that you speak about day to day, that we even speak about day to day, that are really the backbone of the program that people just don't realize are really keeping the team connected. I mean, and there's usually and I think some of the new hires, or a couple of the new hires that people aren't talking about, even beyond Akina in the defensive backfield, don't sleep on that. And I trust Nansen and Sark kind of with what their game plan. And even if Akina is brought in to be a bridge to something else, or a bridge of development for maybe someone who's in the program, you can't understate the value of just having that much experience really back there. So Nansen knows what he's doing. If you didn't see his footprint on everything last year, right there with PK, you weren't watching. So I truly expect this to work out smoothly.
There's a really cool symmetry when you think about Akina, who developed the Thorpe Award winners in Huff and Ross in the first round pick, and then even coach someone like Blake Gideon. And now he comes back to Texas, replacing Blake Gideon in a sense, or stepping into a role that Gideon was helpful with, and also trying to figure out who replaces a Thorpe Award winner. So a lot of different symmetry going on there. Eric, I think you saw this one. What happened to the young man out of Waco, Kobe Black? Kobe Black, he is one of the guys who will be likely pressed into trying to replace Barron this year.
Yeah, I wrote a piece today about offensive competition. Black will feature prominently in the piece that I write about defensive competition, because you'll have him going up against Warren Roberson and perhaps Jalen Gilbo, depending on what they want to do at corner. There's a chance that we've been saying for a long time that Gilbo pulls a Jahdae Barron and plays more cornerback. Remains to be seen if that's a feature of spring or if that's something that they wait till August. We're not sure on that, but Black's got a chance to start, no doubt about it. They just want to keep him lean and mean, make sure he's got a big frame. They don't want him to get any bigger than he needs to be. To play corner, 195 pounds is probably perfect for him.
And then I love this one. Need more interceptions this year. Guess who tied for first in the country in interceptions?
I guess you can never have enough interceptions. That would have been great to have 20 more, but Texas were they tied for number one in interceptions? Tied
for one, and they were third in interceptions per game. If you want to, kind of nitpick with the 16 game versus 13.
So, I mean, okay. Well, let's get more interceptions. I'm all aboard that.
I don't know, Archmania. We that's one thing a coach doesn't make the difference in. You got to have some dogs who want the ball. A lot of those picks this year, we're not coaching picks. These are guys making plays on the ball. Getting hands on balls, like it's different. So I'm excited to see if we're going to have some dogs replacing Barron, replacing Makuba, and if Taft can help lead those guys.
One of the other things. Go ahead.
They had only 3 fewer interceptions than they had in 2009, which was when
Earl had 8 himself.
Yeah, Earl Thomas had 8. Blake Gideon had 5 or 6, and then they had the Postal Service, Shockey and Curtis Brown. And
Makuba's going to be missing that regard because he played the ball like a wide receiver. He played wide receiver in high school, and that guy, when the ball was in the air, it was his. He kind of covered like a corner too. So I think Makuba's going to be missed, but we could see Taft have 5 interceptions next year. Wouldn't surprise anybody. Manny Muhammad probably get his hands on a few more. I'm not sure we're going to be worried about lack of interceptions next year.
I think our interceptions are directly correlated to our pressure.
Yeah, and they're not going to have any less pressure next year. They'll probably have more pressure than they did this season.
Before we keep going, talk about some of the guys who maybe have left. Let's go to our sponsor, LC. Take it away.
I'm just going to say, guys, you probably need a fiduciary financial advisor, and I've got the guy for you. His name is David McClellan with Forum Financial. He works broadly and deeply with his clients as a financial life coach, and he should know something about coaching because he won several national championships as a swimmer for the University of Texas. He specializes in financial planning and has contributed numerous articles to Kipling on the topic of retirement tax bombs. So contact David today to be your fiduciary financial planner and schedule a 1-hour consultation to assess your financial situations. The free consultation is available, so just give him a call. The number is 312-933-8823. That's 312-933-8823. His email is also in the description below.
Ian, I see this one. Don't believe in Jalen Gilbo on the outside, who was protected a lot this year in the slot. I think it works the opposite direction.
All right. Nobody's protected in the slot.
Yeah, you get help over the top, some, but laterally you are in a tough spot. Like laterally,
you can exploit the slot.
Corner is easier laterally than the slot is in a single high defense in particular. He does get help on a deep throw.
People had the same concerns about Barron last year. It's total revisionist history of people. Oh, I knew it was going to be great. Everybody had concern. Not everybody. A lot of people had concerns about Barron. We were sticking up from left and right. It's a lot harder to play slot than it is to play corner. Today, Gilbo has the speed. Jaden Gilbo has the speed to play corner. I think Gilbo's biggest issues last year, taking bad angles against the run. That was the biggest issue I saw with him.
And we saw that be real on display in Nashville, where 7 points, maybe even 14, kind of as a result. Somebody starred this one. What's the latest with Wardell Mack? Is he someone who is in between that star and corner spectrum that Duane Akina is going to be able to help out?
Yeah, somebody also asked about Santana Wilson. I'll knock both those out real quick. Wardell Mack moved to slot around October. I felt he was doing a good enough job at corner. They wanted to up the mental workload for him. So he's basically an apprentice there. I don't know how much he's going to play this year. Again, it's a harder position than playing corner. So they see something that they like in his mental game. Santana Wilson is still at corner, needs to get bigger, stronger. He's still plenty fast. Had a pretty good freshman year as far as practice intel we got on him. You can see him having a bright future. Just needs to keep developing.
I think our friend Archmania made a caveat. He said, more interceptions. Okay, it's fine. More pick sixes. And I'm trying to think who did have the pick six, because Kobe Black had his wiped out at Vanderbilt.
Yeah, well, we know they should have had one against Georgia.
I want to guess Barron, just because he had so many in general.
Somebody had one early in the season, I thought.
Anthony Hill had one wiped out too, because there was a blindside block or something like that. Oh man,
Ethan Burke. That's the right answer was Ethan Burke.
Oh man, speaking of DBU, we got Ethan Burke trying to up the pick six totals. Any last thoughts on Akina, especially as he gets his second tenure going at Texas, before we move on to some of the guys he's replacing?
No, my thoughts just go to recruiting. That's been a total shakeup. They were about to take over in this class, especially at corner. Orfe has to kind of start from scratch with guys like Jalen Lott, Jermaine Bishop. And now, the safety board, I think, is going to take a hit now, too. You could probably forget about Blaine Bradford. But, there's hopefully Akina has a very good handle on the DBs out west. California produces a whole lot of really good defensive backs. So I think you'll probably see a couple more new offers go out, or some other targets become real. But we're going to have to get a new handle for the recruiting outlook with this massive shakeup in the secondary.
He's not – I know he was born in Hawaii, but Akina's not Polynesian, right?
I think he's Hawaiian. Whatever that, I don't know. Who's the safety that need to watch for better is let me see, what's that kid's name? There's Jet Washington out of Bishop Gorman. That's a name I was told to pay closer attention to. 4-star kid, 6'4", 195 pounds, and a really, really good basketball player. So that's one we're going to have to pay closer attention to.
I do like on Akina. They've been running a lot of stuff in the last few years on the back end. And I do like the idea with such a young team in the back end of having a guy that's just going to drill a few coverages and man techniques really, really hard. I think that is the best bet for maximizing the secondary is having a guy that excels at doing exactly that. You think like the 2008 secondary where they had what? Freshman Blake Gideon, redshirt freshman Earl Thomas, freshman Aaron Williams once Ryan Palmer got hurt, young Curtis Brown, young Shockey Brown. They put that together well because of Akina's teaching. I think that we'll see if he's still got that fastball. We kind of think he does. I like that fit.
A lot of North Shore in that secondary, right? With the both Browns or just Shockey. And now they got Mark Orfe, a North Shore alum, to help out and maybe make sure that guys like Devin Sanchez don't go out of state and instead come play for their fellow Mustang.
Yeah, and Chase Calicut in this very class, very talented safety, big kid. He's definitely high up the Texas board at safety / big defender.
Before we kind of get into the Terry Joseph stuff, comparing Barron with Gilbo is crazy. Not the same player, Eric.
We're not saying they're the same player. We're saying that it's easier to play corner than it is to play slot. A lot of people thought Barron was going to get torched at slot. They were not taking heed of us saying that he was injured at slot when he got, kind of worked over against Oklahoma State. It's easier to play corner than it is to play slot. Jalen Gilbo will be a better corner than he will be a slot. That doesn't mean he's even going to start. Maybe he gets beat out by Kobe Black. We never know. Also, Jahdae Barron played 5 years. Gilbo's about to enter his 4th.
Well, and then Gilbo was starting over Barron. Well,
2 years ago. But Barron got nicked up in August camp, and Gilbo actually started the first couple games, I believe, and then I think he got nicked up. And but
it didn't last long. It was like one bubble screen in, and you saw how they each played it, and you're like, no.
Barron. Yeah, that was the year when Barron had like 11 tackles for loss or something.
Yeah.
Absurd. Yeah.
He was so freaking good.
The guy that left to create the vacancy that Akina is filling was Terry Joseph. Was going to be the safeties coach with Mark Orfe now at Texas. Obviously had defensive passing game coordinator title, secondary coach title. You can give a lot of credit to him, a significant amount, obviously, for Jahdae Barron winning the Thorpe Award. But as we reported today, he is going to join the New Orleans Saints staff. He's a New Orleans guy, played at Northwestern State, which I know is a little bit out of the way, but from New Orleans, that's a big reason why Texas had some great successes.
Hold on. I'm sorry. I just can't let this happen on my YouTube channel. The reason Barron came back was because he was not a second-round draft pick. Now, the guy talking right now said he should have been a second-round draft pick before that season even happened. Compared him to that nickel at Brian Branch that went in the second round. The reason he came back was because he was not going to be a second-round draft pick. Now, the NFL totally missed that. Obviously, he's going to be a first-round draft pick or maybe second round this year. But we're not saying they're the same player. We're saying it's easier to play corner than it is to play slot.
Terry Joseph going back home. Brandon Staley's going to be the defensive coordinator, right, with Kellen Moore getting his first head coaching gig. And whoever wants to take this, I feel like Terry Joseph is, in a few short years, Akina is known as the dean of DBU, but only 2 Texas defensive backs coaches have produced Thorpe Award winners, and one that produced the most recent one in Jahdae Barron's heading to the NFL. And he also is leaving a much better defense and defensive back room for the people who are succeeding him. Eric, it feels like Terry Joseph's legacy at Texas is going to be a real strong one.
Yeah, him and Gideon. They were both taking the same shrapnel last year. Everybody wanted them fired. I kept getting asked these loaded questions. If you can make any changes on the staff, what would it be? People trying to lead me to that one. It was a slow build in some regards. There were some things they had to overcome schematically. They had to also increase talent. Specifically, Blake Gideon had probably the least amount of attention addressed to his room to give it an overhaul. When he finally got that, we saw how he could coach. But yeah, Terry Joseph, this is a storybook for him. He's had some adversity throughout his career, but he's also had some super high ups. He's the guy that got Kyle Hamilton to Notre Dame. He had a number of huge recruiting wins. He was always underappreciated as a recruiter. If you go and look at the highest star ranking on the roster, I'm pretty sure he's the one that he would win that title. I think it's not even close, actually. Everybody's always talking about Kyle Flood and all these other guys. Terry Joseph had the highest star ranking of any recruiter on the staff. Good coach, really good coach. And, it's unfortunate we're not going to see him coach safety because we actually hear he's a better safeties coach than corners coach. But, that room is going to have to really show a lot of maturity. Thank heavens that Michael Taft did return because that room needs leadership now more than ever. That's a big blow to lose both coaches. That safety room loved Blake Gideon. I think they really took on his personality. They were excited to get Terry Joseph. That kind of muted the blow of losing Gideon, somebody that they're already very familiar with. So now they're going to have to come together, and thankfully Taft is there, and there's some other mature players in there as well.
It looks like I'm looking at the Saints depth chart. He's got, speaking of Paulson Adebo, gets to coach him. Kool-Aid McKinstry, Tyrann Matthew still there. Alante Taylor, like he's going to have some guys to work with on a team up there in New Orleans that working from the ground up, especially with their salary cap problems. But Drew, when you look at what Joseph was able to accomplish, what are some of the things, maybe aside from the Thorpe Award, that stand out to you looking at it maybe from an ex-player perspective?
I'm going to say this, but I hope it doesn't sound like I'm taking anything away from Terry Joseph. What I think the Texas staff, and starting with Sark and bringing in Nansen and PK and going into every year and not settling for where they were schematically, how they were deploying the players they have, not settling on the pass rush and settling on their ability to create pressure and create some stress on quarterbacks. Not settling on the coaching and the way they disguise things and the way they really lean into the maturity of hungry players. I think while I think Terry Joseph and Blake Gideon did an incredible job here, really dispelling all the doubts that people had over the last 3 years. I do know, when you look at the players we've had at DB, even those that have transferred to other places, Texas has gotten more out of those guys than they've even gotten for themselves when they've left to go other places. I just think there's a combination of the scheme, the standards, the way they show up every day, and the players and the culture that's here, that right now I feel like we're getting the most out of these players. Jade Barron tapped out. I want to see Malik Muhammad take a next step. Taft has exceeded everything anyone's thought. Even going back to my boy when he was a safety out of Lamar, my guy 2 years ago,
Anthony Cook.
Anthony Cook. Like we've continued to show we're getting the most out of the players at the DB position. I do think that has something to do with the way we're just deploying our defense, but the way we're built culturally and the talent that we're able to recruit. So I wish Terry Joseph the best. I think he's been a great coach, but I think as long as we continue to build on the culture of what it's like to be a DB and playing to a standard as a DB at Texas, my hope and my thought is that, we'll continue to produce guys that want to wear that jersey and that want to play that position and do it at a high standard. So I'm excited about Akina coming back. Huff has been around the program since I can remember, really, since he retired. So, I really think we have a formula here that will continue to get the most out of the players that we have and really stretch them to put themselves in a position to play at the next level.
Hey, one final word, because it dawned on me right about it this morning. But, these coaches that depart, their fingerprints are still on the program for years to come because of the players that they leave behind. Jeff Choate did a great job with Anthony Hill. We're hearing really good things about this true freshman cornerback class of Caleb Chester, Grayson Littleton, and Cade Phillips already. They're all on campus. So those guys, Terry Joseph, his recruiting will pay dividends for the class, for the program going forward. And I really think Caleb Chester is going to be found gold. Very underrated player, but they recruited him like a priority, and he's got the mental attributes I'm already hearing about to be a future nickel. So there's a lot of value in finding those types of guys. So, they're gone on to better things. We wish them both luck getting at Georgia Tech and Joseph at the Saints. But, they're going to leave a lasting impression at Texas.
Speaking of lasting impression and legacy, Terry Joseph had his next Kyle Hamilton lined up. Another freshman enrollee.
Which Blake Gideon did that was one of Blake Gideon's best jobs recruiting. So Blake Gideon did a great job. Terry played a small role in that. And then he was about to coach him, had Kyle Hamilton again.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see how we're talking about Jonah Williams. I'm very curious to see how Akina makes the most of him. Like the comp was Kyle Hamilton. Now the comp is AC Drew is wincing a little bit. I don't know that there's an easy comp. I mean, the comp is like Drew Kelson.
We
Jonah,
found
running back.
finally.
The running back for a game. Hey,
Big,
if you make some
big
freedom,
five-star.
I'm all for it.
big 5-star athlete just gets spun down to linebacker.
He's not playing linebacker. Bite your tongue.
He's at Texas because they stopped recruiting him as a linebacker in a big part. I guess my last thing on Terry Joseph is that I think we've seen watching the carousel a lot of these college coaches go to the NFL because of being disgruntled with the college schedule and things like that. Not to say that Terry Joseph didn't have hard hours and recruited a position with a lot of personalities, but like this is Mama calling. He played baseball at Northwestern State, but like I said, he grew up in New Orleans, and this is the Saints, Louisiana's NFL team being able to go and coach and help that franchise out. I'm sure it's a dream come true for him, and it's also just a really, really awesome story that he is able to parlay the success that he experienced at Texas into getting an opportunity in the NFL, which, like I always say, it's the pinnacle of football. So anything else?
Some more of that symmetry you're talking about. Akina comes home, Terry Joseph comes home.
Before we keep going, got to show some love to our other sponsor, that is Luxe Kitchen and Bath.
This video is brought to you by Luxe Kitchen and Bath. Luxe has been offering high-end kitchen and bathroom remodels for 3 generations throughout the greater Austin area. With 5-star review after 5-star review on Google and Facebook, and an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau, you can put your faith in Luxe Kitchen and Bath's award-winning designers and skilled craftspeople to bring to life that dream vision of your special home. But that's not all. Luxe's all-star team provides full remodels, large additions, and even commercial build-outs as well. So call Luxe Kitchen and Bath at 833-358-LUXE today. Or visit luxekitchenbath.com to discover where quality meets luxury and begin the process of transforming your home. Get a free quote today by calling 833-358-LUXE. That's LUXE. Or by visiting luxekitchenbath.com. Link in the description.
We'll get to something you wrote today, Eric, but I do like this question. Can this year's defense actually be better athletes than last year? Linebacker, physical improvement. Probably going to happen with Leonga Lafau.
I don't know. Benda's fast. I don't know.
But then you got Ty Anthony Smith.
Well, he's fast.
But for the linebackers, as PK defines it, you're changing out Baron Sorrell for Ethan Burt?
That's a little bit more athleticism, maybe, though I'm not sure a better player. D-tackle, you're not getting more athletic. At edge, you're just going to get more athletic because you have another year in the weight room for Colin Simmons and Trey Moore. Who knows what that'll do for Simmons? So I guess you could say a little more athletic there.
And then safety, it's maybe, but you lose a lot with Makuba leaving. You lose a lot of the smarts at that spot.
I don't know. Jelani McDonald's a really good athlete. Makuba, I would probably say, is a little bit better of an athlete. Certainly, I don't know. That one's actually pretty close. And hopefully get Derek Williams back healthy. And, he's a damn good athlete too. I would say it's maybe not quite as fast as last year. What do you guys think?
I want to say it'll be faster, but probably only very marginally so.
See, I think Baron's going to run a 4.45. I'm not sure Kobe Black would run a 4.45.
I agree.
He ran a 4.45?
I think he's going to run a 4.45.
Baron?
I think so.
I keep
we got the combine coming up. We need to make some predictions.
I would not have pegged him. I would have maybe 4.5, I would think.
Yeah, I predict everybody there does more than 8 on bench press. Wait, I don't know. Makuba's wiry. He'll do it.
You're not going to get the Jatavian Sanders experience. Pro day. It's funny because these most recent pro days are great successes. You watch Christian Jones and all these guys have great pro days. Used to, we were looking for anything in pro days, and now we're looking for anything to be negative. And well, Jatavian Sanders threw that out there. And yeah, Victor, this is how does Jelani McDonald's athleticism, especially at 6'2", 200, compared to the wiry, like you mentioned, that the wiry 190 maybe that Makuba played at, how do those change when you see that different player out there? What is Taft still going to be the strong safety?
Yeah, I think he'll play the same role, and then they'll expand it a little bit more and take it because he's very versatile. He could play up near the line of scrimmage. He could play deep. I think they will take advantage of that. But anybody that lines up next to him, that's one of the big things about him coming back is it makes it a lot easier to get Jonah Williams on the field. So you've got him. He's obviously smart, and I think Taft's an underrated athlete too. Taft's going to run in the 4.5s. When the time comes, he just needs to get bigger. That's his only question. Makuba was a smart player, no doubt about that. And he was back home again, another player. It's a lot easier to play anything other than slot. His best year was moving back to his two best years were probably his freshman year when he was at safety and his final year when he was at safety.
Ian, will the dime be faster? That may be a good question.
No. Yes.
Yeah, Gavin Holmes was pretty quick now that I think about it.
I don't think so. I don't think it really super matters. The whole point of the dime when they're playing Tampa 2 is keep the ball in front of you, make them either hold the ball and throw it into zone coverage or check. I'm botching the process. If you try to hold the ball, you have Colin Simmons and Trey Moore and another edge and Anthony Hill chasing you. If you try to get the ball out fast, everybody is playing in deep zone drops and they're just converging on the ball. So it's not really a scheme where it's like having the fastest people on the field is the key. Like you want speed, they're playing dime, but there's not really. It's going to be marginal differences here and there, and I don't think that's going to matter.
Yeah, you're faster by a personnel package. One player to watch out for as an X factor that was speed would be Warren Roberson. That guy can get after it pretty good.
I feel like another big thing for that formation is going to be who plays in formation and personnel package, who plays Jahdae Barron's role, that middle linebacker, who plays that guy who takes that Tampa 2 drop on a regular basis.
Yeah, you could have McDonald do that if you want. You could have Taft do it.
I think Taft will do it. I think they'll play McDonald in the middle, or whoever the most heady. They might play Jordan Johnson-Rebel in that middle spot since he's one of the heady guys, the young guys. Who's the dude that came into games late last year against Florida or Kentucky or somebody and was laying huge hits and pursued on the sideline and like some perimeter throws? Was that Mack or was that Roberson?
Probably been Mack.
No, Mack's highlight of the year is he had a pass breakup in the end zone, I think, in garbage time. It might have preserved the shutout.
Yep.
It must have been Roberson because that guy, he can run and he can hit. That's the two things he's known for.
Well, in special teams penalties.
Penalties, yeah.
The new safeties coach. The new safeties coach has a very famous knack for converting corners that like to run and hit into safeties. So maybe that'll be something else to watch.
We'll see about that. I think he's going to stay at corner.
That's what it was, Eric. The interception late for Wardell Mack. Which more symmetry. He was once committed to Florida.
Well, yeah, they flipped it from there.
But Eric, one of the things you wrote that we can, finish on is looking at some of the position battles on offense. We know there's not going to be one at quarterback. We know there's not going to be one at left tackle. But everywhere else, there's a lot of mixing and matching, a lot of positions up for grabs, 4 new offensive linemen potentially. And offensive line, we'll start there before we get to the skill guys. That seems to be the one that's going to be attracting most of the intrigue throughout whatever spring football looks like.
Yeah, conventional wisdom holds that Cole Hudson is going to start at center next year, but I mean, we got sources telling us that Connor Robertson's getting after it, has been getting after it the last few months, and just is really ready to compete his ass off with his friend. Remember, they committed on the same day years and years ago. They've only gotten closer in that time, so they're going to be pushing each other. I tend to think Cole's going to win it because that gives you Neto, Cole, and Campbell. If you can't run inside with those three guys, I don't know what else they can do. I tend to think Cole will win that, but that's a good battle. Really, DJ Campbell is almost assuredly going to start. The only way that he probably would have a competition on his hands is if Connor beat out Cole, and then Cole and DJ are back to competing again for like the fourth year in a row. So I mean, I think it's going to be chalk where it's Neto, Cole, and DJ, but I would not be surprised by hearing Connor Robertson's name a lot more.
One of the cool things about this room, this competition, and maybe a big variable that might be a little bit of a cause of concern, depending on how you look at it, is the youngest player is probably going to be at right tackle.
Yeah.
Whether that's Baker, whether that's Kojo. And those are two guys that have different floors, different ceilings, but have had opportunities to develop. Baker kind of reminds me of Kelvin Banks in a certain sense, just how they look, maybe not exactly how they play quite yet. But having, fourth year Neto Umeozulu being kind of lead candidate at one of the guard spots, Connor Robertson being fourth year, Hudson being experienced, Campbell being experienced, Gooseby being who he was, like Ian, you wrote about on Saturday. That's a lot of, even though there are unknowns, the answers you have, you still have a lot of data to look back at if you are Kyle Flood, whether it be practice or in games. Ian, what do you think Gooseby is going to be able to provide that might be a little bit different than what Banks did, considering what you wrote Saturday?
Phrased like that, I mean, nothing.
How should I have phrased the question?
That was a weird one.
I don't think he's going to bring anything that Banks didn't also bring.
Right.
I think the probably advantage is that, or the good news is that he's not going to take away as much as you would expect after losing a first round offensive tackle. I think he can, with a good offseason, he should be able to hold up one-on-one against probably just about any edge he faces in the season, at least some, which was a big advantage they had with Banks. He's powerful in the run game. People were telling me that PFF had him graded kind of poorly in the run game, and I don't know why. When I watch, that's not an obvious problem that he has. He has good length. He stays on guys well. He moves his feet well. He's strong. It's not like he's going out there and you're like, oh yeah, young guy, he still needs to get a lot stronger to play more. I'm sure he could get a lot stronger and that would help, but he's not weak at all. He moves well on outside zone. He screens his guys out on inside zone. He drives people off the ball on power.
The first time he came on our radar was for his work in the weight room.
It's not, and he gained weight fast, right? He came in like 6'7", 270 or something, and he's like 320 in no time.
Yep.
I don't know about the screen game, if he'll be as good as Banks in the screen game at finding people on the move, or if they wanted to run GT counter, which they only seem to really do that often because Banks is good at it anyway. I don't think Kyle Flood feels that strongly about it. I don't know that he can find guys on the move quite as well as Banks, because Banks was such a great athlete with change of direction. But he's not going to be bad at that either. So I think the main story is just you're going from one future NFL tackle to another, which is great. That's what you want.
Pretty fun. Again, since there's not much young guys competing at that spot, kind of makes it an old man's position. But at some of the pass catching spots, there's going to be some guys penciled in, Ryan Wingo, DeAndre Moore. But Drew, this is where a lot of young competition could really rise to the top and earn a spot, both at wide receiver and tight end.
I know two things that stand out for me with the way this team has done a really good job over the last few years. specifically in the offseason, is creating competition at every position. You know, whether they pull guys in the portal or they're just having guys develop from within, they're creating competition. I think we'll see the same thing along the offensive line. They're going to create competition. They're going to create depth. They're going to find out what guys do differently. They're going to find ways to see what some of these guys do best. And so you may see a lineup, you may see some starters, you may hear about these things over the course, but at the end of the day, I know the intent of competition is to bring the best out of all of these guys, because you don't know who you're going to be able to use or who has some skills that you haven't tapped into yet. So I think we know the talent that's there. You know, we've been hearing about Parker Livingstone. Of course, we know what to expect with DeAndre Moore and Ryan Wingo, but I expect it to be real competition and see how these guys stretch. I mean, everything I've heard about Khalil Lockett has been great. Everything we've heard about Jamie French and the way he's professional, the way he prepares has been great. I'm actually excited to see the staff lean into the guys that they have developed without going to the portal so far, at least. That's both across the offensive line, at tight end and at wide receiver right now. So that's the thing. I think competition is going to be key for that room, and I think it's only going to make us better. But to the offseason, like, we can't understate how strong, like, the culture, the camaraderie, the learning, the schemes, the guys who are their second and third year in the program, how much better they're going to get, how much stronger, how much faster. Like, we measure what these guys are capable of every year. Every time going into spring, we're benchmarking and looking at how strong they are, how big they are. They're setting goals. So this is kind of my favorite time of year, because this is, maybe I think this way, but this is when the real work happens. Everything you'll see in the fall only happens because of what guys are doing right now in February. So the weight room is mattering right now. The time spent in the film, you know, getting acclimated to these new coaches is going to be great. But the wide receiver specifically, I think we should be excited about the number of bodies we have and the amount of talent we have there, because we don't necessarily know who's going to spring up, but we know the talent is there. And if Sark can find something out of any of these guys, if anyone can find something out of these guys, I know Sark and the way that he deploys them, he'll find a way to do it.
Eric, you think at tight end, it's Jordan Washington? Do they need to maybe look for help elsewhere, or just kind of work with that and hopefully develop some of the other guys behind them?
Yeah, I do think they need to get somebody that can, you know, they just don't go back to Alabama looking for tight ends, as Jeff G says here. I don't know how those guys were actually in Saban's culture. It's crazy, but I do think they need an experienced tight end. It doesn't have to be anybody great. It doesn't have to be a future NFL player. Just somebody that's a credible blocker and a credible receiver. They don't have to be a 50 catch receiver. You know, just somebody that's serviceable and experienced. I'd feel much better about the position if they had that. But I'm very high on Jordan Washington. You know, I think the only competition we'll see at that position is between Washington and Spencer Shannon, and that's just going to come down to who's a better inline blocker. You know, they both need to get better, and so hopefully they can push themselves in that regard. But Jordan Washington, I think, can be a 45, 50 catch receiver next year.
They need a 2023 Gunner Helm.
Yeah.
So I mean, maybe 2023 Gunner Helm was better than we even knew, but they need somebody who can replicate what 2023 Gunner Helm did. That'd be perfect.
Yeah, that'll work. They need somebody that's just, you know, credible blocker, credible receiver. They need more depth. Yeah, somebody that you can actually start if it doesn't work out with either Washington or Shannon. But yeah, they're lacking bodies there. It's unfortunate that Nick Townsend didn't come in and enroll early.
I was waiting on somebody to say his name. He'll be good, but may not be good at the blocking part early. Last but not least, we'll do running back, and obviously Quintravian Wisener is going to be at the top of that depth chart. CJ Baxter, Eric, we'll see what he's able to do. All reports from what he's said and been looking like in public appearances has been positive, but that's way different than what happens when you're on the practice field. Tashard Choice, like you were talking about, with fingerprints all over that running back room, and Chad Scott's going to have to figure out who's going to be the best option for the running back position for Texas next year.
Yeah, well, speaking of running backs, let me get to Ryan Nelson here real quick. He says 0-4 on Bama, guys, depending on what you thought of Bond's season. We got to give Keelan Robinson some love there. He was dynamite, awesome special teams player. Also provided some punches as a running back. which, that leads into Trey Wisner, right? That's kind of what Trey Wisner does. I do think that there's competition at the position. I know he rushed for 1,000 yards this season. He was a workhorse. I mean, he was toughest guy on the team. But I think Jared Gibson and him are going to compete like crazy this spring. I think Gibson's got a chance if he cleans up the young mistakes and some of the fundamental stuff. I think Jared Gibson is he might have a chance to start game one. Well, it kind of depends on how Baxter comes back healthy. But, yeah, I expect a real competition between Wisner and Jared Gibson.
And Jonah Williams, who will move to running back with the new safeties coach.
Oh, little man.
Why not be bad?
He just might.
Eric, what would you say about him on offense? Like he could credibly be a top 50 prospect at receiver.
Oh yeah, my guy Deshae Milburn that trains down in the Southeast Houston. Who did he say he was like? He said he was like a cross between Evan Stewart and Noah Thomas. Man, I believe it.
How about C.J. Donaldson?
How about who?
C.J. Donaldson. Any comparison between Jonah Williams and C.J.
Jonah's
Donaldson?
not going to weigh 235 pounds and running people over. You got to understand the mindset has to be there too.
He's going to knock people's heads off. He's not going to knock heads with people.
When he's got especially when he has a clean shot running the alley. He's not a linebacker. It's not going to happen. You might as well nip this one in the bud right now.
I'm just trolling at this point.
He's trolling me right now.
These sound like contrarian sorts of things, so I don't know.
I've only half convinced myself.
I hope somebody takes that first running back spot, because I think if Trey Wisner is your running back, your second running back, that's a really good second running back. That's a really good guy to come in and get 10, 15 carries and really keep going fresh at a defense. I know this sounds weird. I don't think him as a workhorse is his best utilization. I know it was necessity.
It's not weird at all. Yeah, I think he's a third down back. Very good receiver. They got to replace 86 receptions between Wisner and Blue. I would like to see him as a third down back, comes in and does all the small things right. But you can hit him on a draw and he's going to break a tackle or two. I think that's his best utility. I think it's going to be Jarek Gibson and Baxter splitting the carries, and then you'll have Trey Wisner will carve out a role both on special teams and as a third down back. That's my projection.
Anything on Clark? Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just thinking as far as CJ Baxter, his first season, I think it was probably a little bit less confident, less decisive running, and a little more tiptoeing than we thought. And then last spring, he was physical. Like you kind of saw those flashes of physicality that really would set him apart from really anybody else that's in the backfield right now. The thing is the confidence, like being able to come off an injury and play with that edge and that physicality. That's kind of what separates him from anyone else back there. So we really hoping not only that he gets back healthy, but he gets back and is able to play with the confident physicality and really impose his physicality, his size, his strength, his speed, his elusiveness, but really making sure he's playing downhill and playing behind his pads, because we need that to offset everything else. And he can't be the only one, or Jared Gibson can't be the only one. We need more than one guy. And so it really will come down to, if CJ Baxter can come back and be a difference maker in that way.
I hope Jarek Gibson was doing the mirror drill for pass protection, because it was very evident you look at some of his Pro Football Focus stats, and it's like, his grade for pass pro is so bad. Well, that wasn't the thing. It was that he had like 3 pass pro snaps total throughout the regular season, which I think said a lot. And then one last guy who fits maybe into a few different position battles, Eric, with Michael Terry III, guy who could be utilized in a lot of different ways, but maybe he fits into the running back conversation.
They're looking at him both wide receiver and running back. I don't know. I have no clue what to expect from him. I'm going to be asked about him until probably the end of time, because he came in so highly rated, and fans really latch onto that. I don't see how he's going to play a lot next year, either at running back or wide receiver. That's not to diminish his long-term impact. But like I've always seen him, is a little Jordan Humphrey, and that is as a oversized slot receiver that moves the chains, has really good change of direction. Has a size, physicality advantage over the slot. I don't think he's a running back long term. That's not to say he couldn't play running back. He had some interest at Texas Tech at one point, some other school, Nebraska. I mean, maybe he could play running back for those schools, but I don't know that he's got the natural running back traits that they tend to look for.
This reminds me, talking about, I think you could build an offense that's like all Wildcat players, like Nick Townsend, Michael Terry, Arch, kind of fits into the
Emory Winston played some of that Wildcat too.
Oh man, that could be a lot of different guys just throwing laterals back and forth, turn it into a rugby game. And no, that's Ian. You want to fix the defensive tackle problem? You put Jonah Williams down there.
Just drop Jonah down there.
Probably
it's like that. Remember that NFL game where I think it was the Minnesota Miracle where everybody all the Saints leave, I think, and something like that. So they have to send somebody out for the PAT, and the punter's playing one technique. That's what you could do with Jonah Williams. So, gentlemen, anything else? I think we hit all the big topics of the day.
No, it was a busy day. Let's see what Tuesday brings.
Hey, we still got like you mentioned, we got the NFL Combine this week, so we'll be looking forward and looking back a little bit with all the stuff going on. So make sure you head to InsideTexas.com. Also, if you're here, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel. We will be back tomorrow morning. Ian, is it you or Paul tomorrow?
Tomorrow is Paulie.
Paul will be talking about, I'm sure, what he wrote today. Every big staff at elite programs has to replace good coaches. They have to replace good players. So he'll go in depth on that. We'll see y'all tomorrow as well for recruiting intel. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time on the Inside Texas Football YouTube channel powered by InsideTexas.com.